Dynasties in the NFL aren't built to last. They're built to see how long they can just cheat death. Every team that rises to the top eventually faces the same exact fate, no matter how invincible they once seemed. The Steelers of the 70s felt eternal. The Niners of the 80s rewrote football. The Cowboys of the 90s ruled America's game, and the Patriots of the 2000s and 2010s made winning feel inevitable. For years, they looked untouchable, but every single one of these dynasties fell. Some collapsed under the weight of the salary cap, some were torn apart by egos in the locker room or in the owner's box, others bled out slowly from draft failures, injuries, or the league simply evolving beyond them. And that's the reality of football. Dynasties don't just fade away, they're hunted down by time, by money, by pride, and the very system the NFL is built on. The only question is never if a dynasty will die, it's how and how long it can fight off the inevitable before history claims it. Dynasties don't just run out of talent, they run out of money. The NFL's salary cap was born in 1994 to be the great equalizer as an answer to free agency that would force even the richest teams to make hard choices. At first, it was $34.6 million and since then has swelled up to over $275 million in 2025. But since then, the principle hasn't changed. Every dollar you give to a star player is a dollar you can't spend shoring up the rest of the empire. Titles raise prices. Parades become leverage, and the bill always comes due. The cap doesn't care how beloved your core is, it's a metronome that eventually breaks up your band. However, the cap's sharpest blade unsheathed in 2011. The new CBA introduced a rookie wage scale that made young cornerstone players, especially quarterbacks, artificially cheap for 4 to 5 years. That created the modern window as we know it. You load the roster up while the quarterback is at a bargain. Then hold your breath when the second contract hits. It's why teams like the 2013 Seahawks felt unbeatable with Russell Wilson on a rookie deal, and why roster edges get thinner once the big extension lands. The mechanism was by design. Suppress rookie cost, push more money into veterans, and let the market squeeze teams at the top. That's competitive balance in action. And then when the extension does hit, the trade-offs get brutal. Seattle, like I said, is the case study fans remember in their bones. After the peak of the Legion of Boom era, attrition and the cap collided. Richard Sherman's Achilles, Cam Chancellor's neck, Earl Thomas's injuries, all of it. And suddenly that defense that defined a run was expensive. They were hurt, and they were, of course, getting older. As those deals stacked alongside one another and with Russell Wilson's quarterback market value, the roster needed change. Extensions, cuts, and cap gymnastics followed, and the aura of inevitability vanished. The decline wasn't a mystery, it was a spreadsheet. However, Kansas City has chosen a different path. Amputation to save the body. With Patrick Mahomes entering the expensive half of his career arc, the Chiefs moved on from Tyreek Hill for a package of premium picks rather than locking themselves into a top-of-the-market receiver deal that would ripple across the entire roster. GM at the time Brett Veach said it out loud, that the move was more about creating cap space and flexibility now and later. And it's not a talent critique, it's survival in a capped league, trading a crown jewel to extend the life of a dynasty. New England's longevity shows the other level of this, the quarterback playing ball with the budget. For years, Tom Brady's structure lowered cap hits relative to his market value. Cash could still be great for the player while cap charges stayed manageable for the team. Those cap-light quarterback seasons didn't guarantee rings, but they let the Patriots keep the depth where other contenders got hollow. When your best player doesn't consume a typical superstar slice of the pie, everybody can eat for longer. And teams can delay the pain of the salary cap with tricks like restructures, signing bonus proration, and void years, but they can't ultimately avoid it. Pushing money forward might buy you one more run or one more playoff locker room speech, but it also loads future cap with dead charges that eventually force teardowns. The league even polices the edges. The uncapped 2010 season wasn't truly a loophole. Clubs that front-loaded contracts to game future caps were punished. You can bend the rules of time for a season, but you cannot break them forever. And this is ultimately why dynasties die. The cap doesn't just punch you once, it wears you down. Rookie bargains expiring, second contracts multiplying, injuries draining value, and the relentless math demanding sacrifice. Sometimes you lose a star, but sometimes you lose the spine of your roster. But numbers don't start every collapse because most of the time it's the people. Dynasties are built by obsessives with outsized beliefs, and the same gravity eventually pulls them apart. Titles amplify the credit, and credit breeds control, and ultimately control becomes a tug of war inside the building, whether it's coaches versus owners, quarterback versus coach, the old guard of players versus the new core coming in. And Dallas is the textbook. After back-to-back Super Bowls, the Cowboys didn't get beaten by an opponent first. They were undone by the Jones and Johnson power struggle. At the 1994 owners meeting, days of simmering control issues boiled over into public barbs, including Jerry Jones's infamous line that 500 coaches could have won with that roster. Within 24 hours, the partnership that built a juggernaut was finished. The roster was still elite, but the relationship was not, and that's how a dynasty can blink. New England shows the slower and colder version of the same story. For 2 decades, Belichick's iron ecosystem and Brady's maniacal standard coexisted perfectly, until influence, branding, and succession wedged into the middle. Brady's personal trainer and business partner, Alex Guerrero, became a flashpoint inside the facility. Staffers felt that the lines were blurred, and Belichick formally restricted Guerrero's access. At this same time, the franchise's future at quarterback, who they believed to be Jimmy G, turned into a three-way standoff. Reporting later detailed that owner Robert Kraft ordered Garoppolo's trade against Belichick's football preference, leaving a fuming coach and a liberated quarterback who essentially won the building for the moment. The Patriots still won games, but the alliance in the front office had changed. Once ego and authority turn into daily negotiations, a dynasty is starting to live on borrowed time. Even the Niners of the late 80s and 90s, maybe the league's cleanest machine we've ever seen, couldn't dodge the slow burn Montana and Young succession. Battle split allegiances at every level, from owner Eddie DeBartolotto Jr. to the locker room. In April 1993, the team briefly tried to thread the needle by naming Montana the quote-unquote designated starter, even as they'd already handed the huddle to Young, an impossible compromise that lasted just days before Montana was dealt to Kansas City. You can call it football business. Players, though, can call it choosing sides. The Niners kept winning, but the dynasty's original form was gone the moment that trust and clarity left the room. And this is how ego kills. Not always with a scandal, but with tiny, daily cuts, credit, access, input, succession, until the shared mission becomes a collection of personal missions. When that happens, the clock starts, and the question for every team becomes the same one that keeps showing up in the ruins of every dynasty. Can they keep the people aligned just long enough to survive the next storm? Dynasties, though, they rarely fall in just a singular moment. They erode under thousands of hits. Bodies age, workload stack, and just one torn ligament in the wrong October game can change the shape of an era. The NFL's physics are undefeated. Speed meeting mass for 60 minutes every single game for 17 games a year, and the bill arrives in knees, necks, shoulders, etc. Take the '85 Bears. They were built to terrorize for a decade, and for 1 year they did. But the aftermath reads like an anatomy chart. Quarterback Jim McMahon's shoulder broke, a torn rotator cuff after the infamous 1986 slam, which ended his season. Coordinator Buddy Ryan departed, and the core began to fray. Chicago kept winning regular season games, but the avalanche of injuries and exits of the team kept them from ever becoming a true multi-title dynasty. And look at the Legion of Boom. It shows how attrition turns a juggernaut into a memory. Earl Thomas broke his tibia in December of 2016 and later refractured the same leg in 2018. Cam Chancellor suffered a career-ending neck injury and ultimately stepped away from the game. Richard Sherman tore his Achilles in 2017, and this defense didn't fade because it was figured out. It ran out of healthy Hall of Fame caliber snaps. One by one, the pillars came down, and with them, the myth of inevitability fell. And sometimes just a single injury can slam the window shut. After back-to-back Super Bowls in 1997 and 98, Terrell Davis, the engine of Denver's offense, tore his ACL and MCL in Week 4 of 1999. He never returned to peak form, and Denver never returned to that version of themselves. And that's how fragile a dynasty arc can be. One cutback step, one awkward tackle, and the road seems to end. And zooming out, the numbers support what fans feel. Aging and usage curves shows clear decline bands, especially for high collision roles like running back. The peak for a running back is around 26 and steadily falls, with far fewer peak seasons after 28 and 29 in the modern game. Positional aging models using PFF's WAR likewise show steeper drop-offs in collision-heavy positions than in a quarterback or a kicker. The league has gotten faster, younger, and stronger, meaning that the cliff is going to arrive sooner rather than later. And that's just the obvious damage that we can see on a report. Medical research keeps underlining the cumulative cost. It isn't only concussion that shortens careers, it's years of repeated subconcussive impacts that correlate with measurable brain cell loss and inflammation, the sort of invisible wear that erodes availability and performance long before a headlining injury. Even when schedule quirks like travel, bye timing, and the 17th game don't show a direct league-wide spike in injuries, teams that spiral in the standings tend to have more players on injured reserve. A grim feedback loop where health and results drag each other down. And this is the attrition tax of greatness. Dominant cores aren't simply figured out, they're worn down. Snaps pile up, soft tissue hardens, reflexes slow a singular step, and the same hit that once bounced off starts sticking. In the cap era, you can't insure against all of it. You can only hope your stars survive just long enough to stack banners before the body gives up. And the draft always catches up with you. When you're great, you pick late. And while you're choosing from the bottom of the board, the teams you just beat are reloading with higher prospects. That's how the league is built. The draft is designed to feed the weakest and slowly starve the strongest. Decades of data shows hit rates fall as you slide down the board. The middle rounds are a minefield, and even first-round odds aren't what fans think they are. In a 2025 study, PFF defined hits by multi-year snap thresholds and found stark position-dependent drop-offs, proof that sustaining elite cores through late slots requires threading a needle most teams eventually miss. Parity is not an accident, it's a policy. Since realignment in 2002, most seasons featured at least one team going worst to first in its division. That churn is structural. Easier schedules for last-place teams, earlier draft slots, and the compounding effect of rookie bargains turning into real contributors. The message is as old as the draft itself. Yesterday's bottom feeders become tomorrow's problems for the contenders who keep drafting 32nd. And even the cleanest dynasties misfire. New England extended its run by nailing mid-round role players for years, but late-stage whiffs like N'Keal Harry at 32 in 2019 remind you how thin the margin is when you pick at the back. One miss at wide receiver cost multiple years of cheap, high-impact production and forced the club into pricier veteran solutions that restricted flexibility. That's the compounding effect of drafting from the summit. And there are always ways to fight back, but they're rare and precise. The playbook is simple but unforgiving. Scout exceptionally, develop relentlessly, and be unsentimental about aging contributors. Some front offices cushion late picks by stockpiling day 2 and day 3 swings, by leveraging comp picks and trades, or by trading stars for draft capital before decline hits. Moves that feel ruthless in the moment, but by time against the clock, the draft keeps. When you're living in picks 25 to 32 every single April, the draft isn't just a talent grab, it's a survival pool. And lastly, rules reshape the empires. In 1978, the NFL unlocked the passing game, restricting illegal contact beyond 5 yards and loosening offensive holding interpretation, and the sport bent towards precision timing and yards after the catch. Years later, in 2004, a renewed point of emphasis on illegal contact further tilted the field towards receivers. That combination didn't just tweak tendencies, it rewrote what dominant looks like from decade to decade. Schemes ultimately adapt until they don't. Look at Bill Walsh's philosophy. Get the ball out, manufacture space, punish angles. That became the language of modern offenses and then evolved again into spread looks, empty, and motion marriages that stress every blade of grass. The next wave folded into RPOs from the college game, and by the late 2010s and early 20s, first down shotgun and RPO rates climbed steadily as teams chased easy answers against light boxes and too high shells. Then defenses countered, compressing passing lanes and shrieking average air yards to decade lows in 2024. Evolution is ultimately a fistfight, and if you stop swinging, you get solved. Also, personnel value flips with the meta. As structure shifted, so did what matters most. The league's embrace of QB mobility and design runs didn't just add yards, it changed math of football. In 2023, QB runs delivered positive EPA per carry, dramatically outpacing traditional RB efficiency, a signal that premium on-space creating threats under center keeps rising. Meanwhile, aging curves remain cruel to collision positions, and by the time a power roster tries to run it back the old way, the sport has priced and schemed for something brand new. And recent analytics trends show a large share of throws at or behind the line of scrimmage, aka teams chasing free yards with bubbles and screens, just as defenses improved at killing those plays. Passing games that didn't evolve route depth, motion, and timing to recreate explosive, watch efficiency sink. The lesson for Dynasties is a harsh one. Yesterday's edge for us might become our fall tomorrow. So overall, Dynasties aren't dying for just one reason. They die because all 5 of these different clocks eventually hit zero at the same time. The salary cap forces hard decisions and eventually tears at depth. Ego and internal conflicts turn shared purposes into turf wars. Injuries and attrition strip away the irreplaceable in a league built on collisions. The draft rewards your rivals while you pick from the back, and the sport itself always changes. Rules, schemes, and value levers shifting under your feet. The miracle isn't that dynasties fall, it's that a few survive the squeeze just long enough to stack banners anyways. Which brings us back to the only question that matters for every great team. Not if the end is coming, but how long can they keep cheating death before the numbers, the people, the bodies, and the board finally catch them? Football is ultimately bigger than the scoreboard. Its history, its strategy, its story is worth telling. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit that like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive.